As modernization and westernization sweep through Japan in 1897, the country is in the process of exterminating Oni, Ayakashi, and other monsters. Tsugaru Shinichi, also known as the Oni Slayer, makes a living as a circus performer by killing some of these monsters in cage fights. Tsugaru is attacked one evening by a woman dressed as a French maid. The pair are interrupted by a woman's voice coming from the birdcage the maid was carrying. She is revealed to be the severed head of an immortal who introduces herself as Aya Rindo and her maid bodyguard as Shizuku Hase. She requests that Tsugaru help find her body and offers Tsugaru a chance to extend his lifespan, knowing that he is a half-Oni who is in danger of being consumed by his demon side. They discover that their predicaments both stem from a foreigner with an M engraved on his cane. Tsugaru admits he initially planned to accept his decline into becoming a mindless Oni and take revenge on the circus and its bloodthirsty audience who treated his fights as entertainment. However, Aya gives him a reason to delay his demise, so he kisses her in a makeshift contract. In 1898, a mansion in Lajiver is home to a family of vampires who are trying to make peace with humans sometime after Count Dracula's death. However, Lord Goddard comes home to find his wife, Hannah, murdered. Feeling resentful of the police's efforts to find the culprit, Goddard decides to hire the Cage User, a private detective who has recently built a reputation for solving supernatural cases around Europe. The Cage User turns out to be Tsugaru, though he admits he is more of an apprentice to the real detective that is Aya's head. After surveying the crime scene, Aya asks several questions. How did the murderer know where to find a silver stake and break the lock to the storeroom? Know exactly where the victim would be, to kill her without a struggle, and yet be sloppy enough to leave evidence of a bottle of holy water behind. As Aya and Goddard ponder these questions, a mysterious hunter approaches from the woods outside. Aya interviews Lord Goddard, his family, and their servants at dinner about their activities the hour before the murder. She narrows her suspects down to Alfred the butler and the older son Claude. However, she is unable to resolve a couple of contradictory facts. Later, while walking in the woods, Goddard is attacked by a hunter named Joseph. Goddard easily overpowers the hunter, but Tsugaru and Aya stop Goddard from killing Joseph, instead interrogating him. Joseph reveals that another hunter named Hugo had gone to the mansion 3 days earlier, planning to kill a vampire with a silver stake, and knew someone on the inside willing to help him. When he did not return, Joseph tried to complete the mission. After Tsugaru let Joseph leave, Aya asks Goddard to gather everyone inside the mansion, confident that she can now identify the murderer. After laying out her evidence, Aya deduces that the real killer was the younger son Raol. He reacts by trying to attack Aya, but Tsugaru quickly throws him outside and begins beating him up. Aya informs Lord Goddard that Rael involved Hugo in a plan to kill a vampire with a silver stake. When Goddard defeated the hunter, Rael took out the stake and filled its empty case with holy water, let it freeze in the outside cold, and then used it to murder Hannah. Rael then spilled some of Hannah's blood on the silver stake in the stockroom to make it appear as though a human had murdered her, hoping this would cause his father to retaliate against humans. As Rael meets his end at Tsugaru's hands outside, the sun rises and Aya asks Goddard about a man with an M on his cane. Goddard replies that a few days earlier he was approached by a man calling himself Professor who offered to take him to London, but he declined. In 1899, Arsène Lupin recruits Eric, the Phantom of the Opera, to steal a diamond called the Penultimate Night from Phil's mansion in London. Meanwhile, Tsugaru and Aya try to obtain the name of the professor from a London cane shop but are accosted by two men and picked up by London police who already have twin thieves in custody. The men turn out to be Sherlock Holmes and his assistant Dr. Watson, one of two detectives hired by Fogg to counter Lupin's threat, the other being the Cage User. Upon hearing this, the police transport the detectives straight to Fogg's mansion. Fogg shows off his security measures to the detectives, Inspector Lestrade, and two members of the highly regarded Royce group. He also displays the diamond locked in a small puzzle safe made of silver. Fogg claims the diamond and the safe were both made by German dwarves who left a message behind for future generations. Both detectives try to think of how Lupin could infiltrate the chamber with the many layers of security, and Aya comes up with an improbable but not impossible method, teasing Tsugaru with the hint of Ishikawa Goemon. Mycroft Holmes pays a visit to Holmes and Watson in their flat on Baker Street but quickly deduces that Holmes is in Lupin in disguise who is exposed when the real Holmes arrives. Lupin leaps out a window, promising to steal Fogg's treasure. Meanwhile, Tsugaru discovers that the cage with Aya's head was accidentally switched with one containing a parrot. Shizuku is nearly run over by Eric driving Lupin's getaway car, and Lupin offers help her find Aya. Mycroft warns Sherlock to beware of the Royce's agents, whom he suspects plan steal the diamond themselves and let Lupin take the fall. The twin thieves from earlier run over Aya with their vehicle, but she is rescued by Lupin, who reveals himself to the Cage User group. Sugaru attacks him, but Lupin is able to knock him unconscious and warn Aya to stay off the case. That night, Lupin puts his plan into action while Aya sends a note to Sherlock that she intends to watch from above ground. Inside the secure chamber, Sherlock fires multiple rounds into the keyholes, jamming the locks and sealing him, Watson, Fogg, and Inspector Ganimard inside. However, when the appointed time comes, an explosion in the moat to the mansion causes water to fill the underground chamber through the air vent. Royce's agent, Fatima Double Darts, frees the group from the flooded chamber, but the silver safe and diamond are missing. Sherlock quickly deduces that Lupin disguised himself as Inspector Ganimard and assisted Eric to pull the safe up through the broken vent. Sherlock hid the diamond in Watson's jacket, but Lupin grabs the diamond and escapes with Eric in the confusion. They arrive at the greenhouse, only to find that Aya had been hiding inside the safe the whole time, and she calls for Tsugaru. Shizuku and Tsugaru prepare to fight Lupin and Eric, but Royce's agent Reynolds Stinghart arrives and takes the diamond. Suddenly, the access bridge is blown up and the professor and his entourage arrive on the mansion grounds, slaughtering several guards in their search for the diamond. Lupin, Eric, Holmes, Watson, the cage user group, the Royce's agents, the professor's group, and the police detachment all engage in a battle across the mansion for the diamond. As the battle rages on in the chapel, Camilla manages to subdue Shizuku, Eric confounds Fatima, and Lupin temporarily allies with Tsugaru to fight Reynolds. Meanwhile, Holmes tries to think of a strategy to counter Aleister's poison darts. The fights are interrupted as Jack the Ripper bursts into the chapel, killing both Fatima and Reynolds before taking the diamond. Lupin and Eric decide to flee, not wanting to risk fighting Jack. Meanwhile, the professor himself appears before Holmes, Watson, and Aya, revealing that he is none other than James Moriarty. He admits he has Aya's body and that he injected the blood of an immortal mixed with that of an Oni into several subjects, but only Jack survived, making him powerful and nearly indestructible. He now wants to add the blood of a werewolf to make Jack even more powerful. Jack grabs the diamond, and while defeating Tsugaru, recognizes him as a survivor of Moriarty's Oni experiment. Jack signals Moriarty's group, the banquet organization, their mission is complete, and they leave. However, Tsugaru reveals that he swiped the diamond from Jack's pocket and Aya uses it to decipher the location of German werewolves. 8 years earlier in the southwestern German mountains, a werewolf was pursued and attacked by a group of villagers, but she sacrificed herself to save her daughter. Now, Tsugaru, Aya, and Shizuku search the area for werewolves, and near the village of Huhlendorf they encounter the village doctor, Heinemann. He has heard of the cage user and begs them to investigate the abduction of village girls on rainy nights every 4 months who are then found torn to pieces. They meet the villagers, who are quite hostile, but Aya convinces Gustav, father of the crippled Louise and the latest girl to be taken, that she can identify the culprit within 2 days. Aya determines that a werewolf descended the chimney in wolf form, transformed into a werewolf, messed up the room in an apparent rage and wrapped Louise on a cloth before escaping with her through a now broken window. Aya tells Gustav he is unlikely to see Louise alive again but will do her utmost to discover the killer. Aya, Tsugaru, and Shizuku visit the elderly, bedridden mayor who only agrees to point them towards the mystical werewolf village in the forest of fangs after Aya promises to name the killer within 2 days. Meanwhile, the two Royce's agents Kylie and Alice arrived by train. Aya tells the mayor that she suspects a werewolf lives in Huhlendorf even though he investigated the outsiders, Heinemann the doctor, Sinat the engineer, and Alma the artist, but eliminated them as suspects. He says the werewolves are only vulnerable in their human forms and thinks an ultimate werewolf is the product of selective breeding and may be very hard to kill. Aya questions Sinat, who explains that 13 years ago the village took in the pregnant woman Rosa, who later gave birth to Jep, but they were both killed after being identified as werewolves. Aya interviews Alma, whom she suspects is lying about her past, and then interviews Heinemann, but they are interrupted by the arrival of Royce's agents Alice Rapachot and Kyle Chaintail. That night the villagers surround Alma's house believing she is the werewolf, and she proclaims that she killed and ate Louise before she transforms into a golden werewolf. She seems impervious to the silver bullets of Rapachot and Shizuku and escapes into the forest pursued by Tsugaru carrying Aya. Tsugaru and the werewolf engage in a fierce fight and the werewolf throws Aya's cage over the waterfall at Misty Hollow. However, Shizuku saves Aya before falling to the watery depths below herself. After Aya uncovers Alma as the werewolf, the mayor agrees to tell her how to use the diamond to find the forest of fangs, and they leave before dawn accompanied by the Royce agents. Meanwhile, Shizuku awakens in the werewolf village, Walfenhall, where 3 girls are keeping her warm. The leader of the girls, Nora, tells Shizuku that young werewolf girls are being murdered in the forest on rainy days, their faces covered in buckshot. Because the rain drowns out both smell and the sound, they can't track the murderer. The girls then try to smuggle Shizuku out of their village, but she is discovered and put on trial by the elderly village chief. The chief is unwilling to listen to the claims by Shizuku and Nora's friends, Vera and Kaya, that she is innocent. The trial is suddenly interrupted when a gunshot rings out from the forest. The werewolves rush to the sound where they see Nora dead from a gunshot wound to the chest. Shizuku gathers clues from the crime scene which suggests Nora was shot elsewhere and carried to the current spot, and what they heard was a second gunshot. However, she cannot reach a conclusion, further angering the werewolves. Meanwhile, as the cage user and Royce's agents slowly make their way towards the village along a cliff face, they are attacked by Moriarty's monster, Victor. Victor takes Aya and Suguru to the bottom of the cliff, explaining he saved them from the Royce agents. In return, he asks for the location of the werewolf village and the black diamond as collateral. Aya agrees as his associate Carmilla is unable to move during daylight hours. On arriving at Wolfenhall, Vera takes Aya and Suguru to see Shizuku, who informs them of her findings, but they can't free her yet as her absence will raise the alarm. Instead, Aya uses Suguru to gather more clues where Nora's body was found and spots a hidden switch on a conical rock. The two enter a secret underground passage and find a shotgun with other evidence the other girls were murdered there, where the werewolves would be unable to see, hear, or smell the murder. They also find Alma's corpse in the passage, though Aya notes she wasn't killed there. After emerging from the passage near Huhlendorf, Aya sees Louise's parents, who confess they abandoned her because of her disability. Louise was rescued by Jet, whom she later betrayed her to the other villagers to prove her worth. Aya and Suguru return to Wolfenhall and free Shizuku but are tracked by 3 werewolves. Meanwhile, the Royce agents rally the humans and lead an attack on Wolfenhall to slaughter the werewolves and are joined by the banquet. As the battle rages, Aya sends Shizuku to save Kaya while she gets Vera to dig in a nearby graveyard, uncovering the last clue she needs to solve the mystery. Suguru knocks out Kyle to save Victor, who gives him the diamond back and the information that Aya's body is locked up in Moriarty's base in London as thanks. Alice uses her trick shooting skills but is outfoxed by a Leicester and stuck with a slow-acting poison. Shizuku fights Carmilla in a rematch of their London fight, but it ends in a draw. The cage user group reconvenes at the town square to reveal the killer who murdered every girl in both villages was Nora, who was also Jet and Louise at different times depending on the context, as all 3 girls looked very similar. Making use of the underground passage, Nora escaped the village when the original Louise revealed her as Jet and sparked a mob of humans to burn her and her mother to death. She lived as a werewolf in Wolfenhall, but did not like how she and other werewolf girls were being treated there either. So, using the hidden passage, she kidnapped Louise and posed as her in the human village, then would pick a stray young human girl to murder and drag them to the werewolf village to later be discovered, ensuring that the humans and werewolves would suspect the other as the culprit. Nora admits to her role as the culprit, including the deaths of Alma and the real Louise in the hidden passage. As she flees the scene and returns to her cave, Suguru awaits and manages to tie her up, but Aya lets Nora go, as she believed that her goals of freeing her fellow villagers from sexual servitude by faking their deaths with human bodies was a noble goal. As Nora decides to travel the world, the cage user plans to return to London. This is the end of my video, so please watching all of my anime recap series. Thanks for watching.